Have you ever been walking down the street and come across a person with a tattoo on their face and wanted to ask, why? Have you ever thought about what it's like to be a skydiver? Do you ever think about things that may or may not touch your life personally, such as human trafficking or sex slavery? JoleneMaria.TV has, and she wants to share it with you. This is the lifestyles of the interesting and infamous.
Welcome to my island. Welcome to my East Coast island. Where the sun don't always shine inside our minds. It's always a good vibe when we're on the island tide. The island tide. It gets so cold outside.
Welcome to Lifestyles of the Interesting and Infamous. I'm JoleneMaria, your host, and today you guys get the pleasure of meeting Bryan Sobolewski. Did I say that right? Sobolewski. I'm so good at this. So, would you like to tell them a little bit of why you're on the show today?
'Cause you asked me to.
Yes, but what did you do?
Oh, when?
Was it about 10 years ago now?
Probably more like 15. It was 1990 to 1995. My father, brother, and I robbed jewelry stores all over New England.
So how did you get into this? Did your dad actually come up to you and ask you to do this?
Yep, because otherwise I would never have done it. Now, I am, and this is how I can answer that question, and I know for sure that I never would do that without his prompting. I'm a recovering addict, and one night when I was coming down, I sat in front of a convenience store for about an hour, fully intent on robbing it, because I had my father's gun, which was legal. He had a license for it, and I couldn't do it. I didn't have the courage, I guess, is what you would call it. Or maybe I just wasn't that crazy back then. But when my father put the same gun in my hands and asked me to rob a jewelry store, I didn't second guess it. I didn't ask him what the consequences of that might be. I just did it. And the circumstances were somewhat unique in that he presented the first robbery to us as somebody that had ripped him off.
In what sense?
Well, at the time, and there's a great book out there called Empire, and it's about De Beers. And at the time, every single diamond mined on the planet went through De Beers. De Beers either bought the mine, or I mean, they were one of the true worldwide monopolies.
So the Monsanto of
Oh my God, yeah, absolutely. And they, every single diamond mined went through Israel. So I actually, as a personal trainer now, I have a client, his last name is Hellsberg, which is from the Hellsberg diamond and jewelry stores that are more out west, but a few of them are over here on the East Coast, ironically. And he used to go to Israel, and he used to just transport the diamonds from store to store. Basically what you did was you bought a lot from De Beers. And if you had a great relationship with De Beers, you got a great lot. And you made a ton of money off the diamonds. They were very high quality. Other people got varying qualities of diamonds and did all right. And, you know, if De Beers didn't like you, you got basically a box full of coal.
Well, were diamonds your main focus?
Initially, yeah.
And then it went to what?
Go ahead. What?
And then it went to what?
Our jobs in robbery started off very elaborately. It took us a while to plan each one of them out. We went after very specific people with a very specific plan. And then towards the end, closer to 1995, we were just snatch and grab. We went into jewelry stores, guns out, subdued everybody that was in there, and cleaned out the store.
Did you ever think about it afterwards and worry or feel remorse for the way that you made those people feel?
I still feel remorse for the way I made people feel, yeah. I guess you could say I suffer slightly from post-traumatic stress disorder.
Kind of like your own personal war?
Yeah. I can't sleep without knowing that the front door is locked and the back door is locked and the windows are locked, and that I check under the bed, and if anything is even, if I wake up in the middle of the night from a bad dream, I'll go and check everything again. A little OCD. More, I'm not really sure whether or not OCD is a component of post-traumatic stress disorder, but it feels a little bit more OCD than post-trauma.
Is it because you know what people are capable of?
Probably more so than others, yeah, in terms of me doing things that I never thought I was capable of doing.
Well, what about the dreams? Do you have like nightmares and things associated with it?
Yeah. Mostly having to do with being back in prison.
Do you think that was more traumatic than the actual feelings you got actually doing the heists?
The heists were more adrenaline than anything else. The guilt that came afterwards was definitely intense. And one of our victims died a few months after the robbery. And they tried to charge us with it. It didn't stick, but at the same time, it kind of made very real what we were doing and what we had done. So.
Did you think about it before you even, with the mens rea, knowing going into it, did you kind of already feel that pressure? Because I would. I think I would feel already guilty before I even did it, thinking about doing it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, guilt is a great motivator. So I would say no, that we definitely thought about it. My brother was a little bit more, questioned it a little bit more than I did. He would literally ask, are we bad people for doing this? But on the same token, my dad always presented every robbery as we were going after somebody that was dirty and deserved it. And that's what we didn't question. So we felt, I don't know, terrible term, but almost Robin Hoodish. Not that we gave to the poor, but we definitely stole from what we thought were dirty people anyway. So kind of alleviated it somewhat for us.
How does he come up with these heists? Like, what was the elaborate plans behind them in the beginning when you first started out and you would plan these out? What's kind of like the steps you would go through to get to where you're going to be, knowing where you're going to go and who you're going to do it to?
Well, basically, the way that my father got into it, my father is a graduate of Wentworth School of Technology. He was an engineer, computer engineer, and he sold computer test equipment and made a great living doing it. And he dabbled in wholesale jewelry on the side. So if somebody in the family was getting engaged or needed a piece of jewelry, my father knew people and he could get it at cost because he knew a guy. Now, basically, the people that we were robbing were traveling salesmen, men that would go around from jewelry store to jewelry store trying to sell their product line. They would have a catalog and they would try to sell their product line to different stores. My dad knew one of those guys. That guy ended up being our felony consultant, if you will. He would tell us where everybody was, who was worth robbing. He would make phone calls and order things from the person to make sure that the risk was worth it. Mm-hmm. So that was where we were getting all of our intelligence, if lack of a better term. Sounds like an oxymoron.
So do you think that it's a dangerous field anyway? Because you hear about all like the diamond mining and how dangerous that is for the families who are actually in it mining them. But I mean, all along the way, the fact that it is worth something, do you think it's dangerous in the long run regardless, just because there's something of worth behind what they're putting themselves in front of?
Yeah, no question. Martoni's, which is right up the street on Route 1 in Peabody, was robbed probably about a year after I got out of prison. And the day after it happened, my phone was tapped. I was being followed. So yeah, people tend to go after. I did time with a guy who said that every parole hearing he's ever been to, they asked him if he had a drug problem, and he said no. And they said, does he have an alcohol problem? And he said no. And they said, well, why did you rob banks and rob jewelry stores? And he said, because I had a money problem. And that's where he went to get the money.
Doesn't everybody though?
Yeah, well, it was we didn't. Like I said, my dad made plenty of money.
So what was the motive behind it then? Was it the adrenaline, you think?
I think for my dad, who I've been through a lot of therapy, so I've really tried to understand my father because he hasn't really given me a lot to work with in terms of understanding him and understanding why we ended up where we did. It's a fantastic story in that it's unique, not fantastic because it's great. But his mother, my grandmother, grew up in the Depression. Mm-hmm. And this is a woman who, when I lived with her, traveled to church bazaars to buy yard sale items so that she could sell them at a yard sale and make a nickel. She loved it.
Like the turnover?
Every Saturday she would sit out, and if she could make 5 cents over what she paid for something, she loved it. And she was very frugal, sickeningly so. And I think for my dad, he worked sometimes on the road traveling 19 hours a day. He really was a hard worker. And when he saw that what we could make in a half hour, what he couldn't make in 5 years, something just snapped. And then we were just robbing everybody. At one point we were when we finally got caught and we were sitting and talking to our lawyers, my brother and I, we had found out that he tried to pull a couple of robberies on his own, which we didn't know about. I mean, that's how crazy things got. At one point, he wanted to take down one of the jewelers' buildings in Boston. I mean, it's crazy.
Was your mom around when this stuff was going on?
They have been divorced since I was a kid, and she didn't have much contact with him other than, you know, about us or through us, and she knew nothing about it. Totally.
She didn't know anything about it?
Oh my God, was she heartbroken when she...
Did you kind of think about her first when you got caught?
Having to tell my mother that I was involved in it. My father got arrested first. I denied it as long as I could to her, and then they took my brother. They got my brother in Florida. Once he went down, she started to question and asked me if I was involved, and telling her that was probably one of the worst things I've had to do in my life. Totally broke her heart.
Well, how did you guys end up getting caught anyway? Well, how many did you do first?
Probably about 30.
And then how much did you guys get net worth in that 30?
It depends on which newspaper article you read. We never kept a running tab, although I think my father did at some point. And you got to understand that, you know, netting $250,000 worth of jewelry, we're probably getting a third of that in cash.
Well, because you have to deal with everybody else and kind of spread that out.
Yeah, you know, you get 50 cents on the dollar, maybe. Probably more like 30 cents on the dollar. So, poor us. What was your question? I'm sorry, I lost it.
How did you get caught?
For every one of the robberies, we needed to have a stolen car. So for the third or fourth robbery, my dad's brilliant idea was, my dad used to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and go to the gym. And he used to get us rental cars. So he would rent a car and make a copy of the key and then go back that night and steal that car off the lot. When that source dried up, he said that he knew of a newspaper delivery kid that drove a van around the neighborhood. And my father and brother carjacked him and took the van and used it for one of the robberies. So when the police started to sniff around, and what ended up getting us caught was my father claiming that we had been robbed over Thanksgiving break of 1995. So he was away during Thanksgiving. He staged a fake break-in to the house and then claimed, I don't know, tens of thousands of dollars on his home insurance. And the police knew the second they walked in the door that it was a setup. I don't know how, to this day, I don't know how the cops knew. But they started to sniff around and started to pass our photo around the neighborhood, and eventually they got to the kid who was carjacked. He put a face to the car, and then they just started attaching that to every robbery. Once they had an MO and how we did things just kind of fell apart from there.
Well, what were the emotions that you felt when you did get caught finally? After it was over and things were happening, where you kind of felt like it was the end?
Geez, there was a lot going on for me then, because after my father got arrested, the second thing that went through my head, other than holy crap, was they're coming for me. And it took them a year. I like to say that I spent a year on the run, but I don't think I'm that clever. But the paranoia that I felt had to have taken years off my life. I didn't sleep. I was in the windows constantly looking out if I saw square headlights driving. But I always tell the joke that I was going to school at the time, about an hour commute, and I drove the entire way looking in my rearview mirror. And if I saw square headlights, which back then most cop cars had square headlights, I thought I was clever in thinking that I could spot them following me. But the paranoia was awful. It was almost a sense of relief when I got caught. When I was driving over the Nashua Hudson Bridge, December 26th of 1995, and a red sedan pulled out from behind me and cut me off, came out with his gun, and then I noticed that they had all sides of the bridge in and out cordoned off with police cars, and there was a helicopter. He was screaming at me to get out of the car. I got out of the car and I walked over to the edge of the bridge, and I was going to jump.
Why didn't you?
Because I'm not that courageous, I guess. And I'm afraid of heights. I was scared to death. I was scared to death of going to jail, and I was scared to death of jumping off that bridge. And by the time I could have even climbed it, they were on top of me and I was cuffed.
I feel like that sounds very surreal. Was it like a really surreal feeling?
I knew that it happened, and I know that it happened, but I can't even conjure up those feelings again. It was unbelievable, and every day after that was unbelievable. Just the whole being caught and going to jail that night and being the only one shackled the next morning going to court because I had the most serious charges. I mean, I was in a Nashua City Police jail, and I was facing, multiple counts of armed robbery and larceny and kidnapping and just these incredible charges, and to be the only one shackled from ankle to ankle, wrist to wrist, I knew how serious it was then, and so it just.
Did you start kind of like reliving everything and thinking about all the things you had done?
Yeah, in an attempt to figure out what it is that they were gonna get me for. So when I didn't fight extradition, which is your choice. So I'm in New Hampshire, Massachusetts wants me. You can fight extradition, and 10 times out of 10 you usually lose that battle. So I just came back down to Massachusetts, and my original bail was set at $5 million, which my poor court-appointed attorney said he's never seen anything like that. He told me John Dillinger's bail wasn't that high.
So in prison, did you meet other people who are in similar situations?
Yeah, I met a couple of people in prison that had been questioned about robberies that we had done.
Were they like, oh, you're the infamous one?
They're like, oh my God, I got questioned for one of the jobs that you did. People that had robbed jewelry stores too. So yeah, prison was, God, I don't even know how to describe it. I really don't. It's there's two things that I tell people, that it's absolutely the awfulest place on earth, but secondly, if you do pray to God, one of your prayers should be thanking Him that they do exist, because the worst people on the planet are in there and should be in there. But
do you think that has something to do with your paranoia, knowing that there's people like that out there?
Yeah, and seeing them firsthand, killers and rapists, and it was just awful.
Are there different segments when you're there of people that kind of?
No, they're not allowed to segregate. The only people that they segregate, we called it checking in, which is going into protective custody. So Father Gagan, which was a big case here in Massachusetts, a priest that spent special time with many boys, was there, but they do it for his safety and just for the safety of all the other inmates, because you basically walk in there with a giant bullseye.
Targets.
Yeah, you are definitely a target. Somebody is taking you out. So they, or you can request being put into protective custody. The problem is being in protective custody, if for any reason you're ever taken out of protective custody, you're getting stabbed.
You're going to probably die.
No question.
I know this is kind of totally off topic, but how's the food in prison?
Absolutely, positively terrible. It's, you get grits 4 times a week. You get oatmeal the other days a week, and Sundays was eggs, but they were always watery and they were always green. Green eggs, not Dr. Seuss green, not
Dr.
yummy.
Seuss.
No, not that kind. Terrible, terrible, terrible. And they would serve chicken for a lot of dinners, but the chickens, it was so small that you couldn't help but notice that some days there were pigeons in the prison yard and other days they weren't. And you wondered if maybe they were cooking pigeon for you. Terrible. My first day in there, my first meal, I was sitting at a table with my brother and somebody fished a cockroach out of the soup. Terrible. Absolutely terrible. So basically, in Concord, where you're not classified yet, so everybody who's ever sentenced in Massachusetts goes to Concord, and you were only supposed to spend a couple of days there, tops, 1 or 2 days before they classify you and send you to the level of security that they feel you deserve. I was there for 8 months because of overcrowding, and you're not allowed to have any real property in that type of prison. They don't want to have to lug a ton of property when they move you. So each block shared a hot pot. So if you managed to get it that night and you bought stuff from the canteen, and the canteen is where people can send you money from the street, and you have an account and you can spend $25 a week on tuna, bread, mayonnaise. You can't refrigerate any of it, so you got to be careful and use it quick if you're going to buy stuff that's perishable. Pasta, stuff like that you can buy, and if you can use the hot pot. I've had some gourmet meals. in prison, cooked in a hot pot. I had linguine and clam sauce in prison, and it was absolutely outstanding. I would order it and pay $60 for it in a restaurant, easily. It was amazing. Jamie Regano, if you're out there, he cooked it for me. Haven't seen him since, but it was delicious.
Well, how did you end up getting into comedy after all of this?
Initially, when I got out of prison, I went right back to school. I went to Salem State and started studying psychology because I wanted to help people, always. As a recovering addict, I wanted to help people. As an ex-con, I wanted to help people. It was what had me scratching my head my entire sentence was the fact that I had met several people in prison that told me that it was their second and third bid. Like they had been in and out of the system multiple times. And I just couldn't, I will never go back. I am a little paranoid jaywalking at this point. I learned, I'm just not going.
So do you think that you would make different decisions if it was now and you knew what you knew now and your dad had approached you again?
No question. No, I would turn him in. If he even made a peep to me about any illegal activity, I would turn him in a second. No way. Just not happening.
All because of prison?
Oh yeah. I'm never going back. Never. That's not to say they're going to have to kill me before they drag me back. I just don't engage in any activity that even could be considered illegal. The quiet life, and I don't like any drama. I still jump when I hear a siren. It freaks me out. So no, I'm not going back.
So back to about how you got into comedy afterwards then.
I left Salem State with a degree in psychology and my minor was in social work. And the social work classes that I took, one of them put you in an internship. And most of the semester you were supposed to work for some social club. I chose the Boys and Girls Club in Salem. And I didn't know that they were going to query me. So I filled out the query, gave them my social security number, knew it was going to come back smoking, and just rolled the dice. They escorted me out of the building the day my query came back. It was embarrassing, and it kind of drove home how society looks at ex-cons.
Do you look at yourself that way?
Part of me does, and part of me doesn't. I feel as if I'm maybe part of less than the 1% of people that the likelihood of me reoffending is probably low. The things that I have done post-prison in terms of degrees, I have 2 degrees, I'm a certified personal trainer. I've been working full-time since I got out, sometimes 2 full-time jobs. At the same time, I understand why, but the conundrum that Massachusetts faces, and I imagine every state in the country, because we jail more people than any country in the world combined, is yes, you can punish these people and you can give them outrageous numbers of years in terms of punishment. But any penologist will tell you that that does not deter crime. It never has and never will. And regardless of how many years you give somebody, you're going to have to open that door someday and let them out. And the question that people have to ask themselves is, what person do you want to walk out of prison? Do you want them to be angry with no opportunity and the fact that you've locked them up and the fact that the query is going to prevent them from being able to work in most jobs? At this point, I couldn't get a job bagging groceries at Whole Foods. They won't hire me.
I've worked at Whole Foods.
Yeah,
I barely got a job there.
See? Mm-hmm. They wouldn't even look. They didn't even call me back. I wanted to do it part-time, but that's really the question. I mean, it is the stance on crime that we have actually creating or increasing the chances of reoffending. Mm-hmm. And I think it is.
Like they're not making it easier to adjust back into the real world if you wanted to be back in the real world and you made a real conscious effort?
No, and it's a very real concern because I remember before Obama was elected, he did a townhouse meeting and a woman got up and said, both of my brothers are offenders and they can't work. They can't find work anywhere. Is there something that can be done about this? And he said, it's a very real problem and we're going to look at it. And he did reform it. Do you know what he did? He made it so that you are not allowed to ask during the filling out of the application whether or not somebody's been convicted of a felony, but you can ask any time after that. Mm-hmm. So really little or nothing was done about it. And I totally get it. It really is a catch-22 situation because for the most part, you probably don't want those people working for you. But there
there's
are
a
people
lot of
out
things
there.
on. I took an HR class and they said something about this, about like the application. There's a lot of things on an application you don't even have to fill out. Like they will find things about you. They want to know whether you're married. They want to know, things that doesn't really matter, but your social status will matter in the long run for that job. But you don't actually have to say those things on your applications.
Yeah.
And that's one of the big ones, obviously. But I mean, so you were filling out these applications and getting back into the job force, and then go on.
I settled on personal training because they don't ask. And when I went to Equinox, which is where I work now in downtown Boston, they say, have you ever been convicted of a felony in the last 7 years? Which by the time I started working for them, I hadn't been. During the time that I've been out, a lot of people said, you should write a book. You should write a book. And it took the 10th person to say that. I actually sat down and started the process of writing a book. And at first it was a memoir, because memoirs were big. And then that idiot wrote 1 million little pieces. And I read it, and it was a great book, and found out that it was Oprah's Book of the Month Club. And then a month later, they said he lied about everything in it that made it a really interesting read. And then, publishers and agents wouldn't touch memoirs.
Right.
They don't want it. And then a Harvard girl got bagged for it, for plagiarizing her entire memoir. And it was just one after the other of people writing these memoirs, making that genre of book that was getting so popular worse and worse. So, make a long story short, 5 or 6 versions of my book later, I turned it into a true crime, which is a different read. It is still like a memoir. It's about my life, but it reads more like a true crime, like this happened and this happened, because one of the agents that I had over the years said, you're writing about something that people won't experience. So just stick to the stuff that people can't get from movies and TV and stuff like that.
The reasons why people read books, pretty much.
Yeah.
What's the name of that book?
It's called Family Jewels.
Okay, and people can look that up and buy it if they wanted to?
I'm going to launch it probably within the next week or two. So they will be able to get it on Amazon within the next week or two. I'm just proofing it now and making sure that everything is in place.
Awesome. So you do comedy on the side, though, right?
Yeah. I started to get discouraged with writing the book because it is so hard to publish a book. They really want to know more who you are and how you're going to be able to sell this book above and beyond what they're going to do to market it than they are what you've written.
Right.
So for me, the life that I've lived and what I want to do with who I am and what I've learned from these experiences, I just have to get my story out there. I just want it to be out there because about 5 or 6 years ago, I started speaking at Lexington High School. And I go and I talk to the entire junior and senior class of the entire school about addiction and about choices, and doubtful that many of the students sitting there are going to make the same decisions that I did. But if 2 or 3 people hear that regardless of whether you're robbing jewelry stores or putting something online about somebody, there's consequences to your actions that can be pretty far-reaching, is pretty much my message. And I started traveling to a lot of different schools that first year, and because of having to work full-time, I slowed down on it a little bit. Once the book comes out, I'm going to try to do it a little bit more, because that's ideally what I want to do. I really just want to help people that the best email that I've ever gotten was one of the health teachers from Lexington High forwarded me an email that she got from a parent of one of the students that heard me speak that day. And she said, I don't know who this kid is, but this guest speaker opened a dialogue between me and my child that I wasn't able to open. And the teachers there have guest speakers come in because they have to stay somewhat anonymous in terms of their personal life. They can't say, hey, I'm a recovering addict too, I can help you out there. And they have to keep up a pretty professional wall. So when they have somebody come in and speak that the kids can relate to, they think it's worthwhile.
Yeah.
So I got into comedy because if the book wasn't going to work, I wanted to try to make prison funny, which is, I think, quite a task. And
I think it works.
And I wanted some medium to get the story out. And so when the book comes out, I figure comedy would be a great way to get the word out there.
It was very surreal to watch you make jokes about that, because the entire time I was like, is this real? Like, is he really making fun of himself and saying these things? Because if that's a real story, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, I think that's the challenge. When I first started in comedy, I would just get up and start telling people I was an ex-con and that I had done these things, and I felt as if I had lost the audience, because they do sit there the whole time and they're like, is he any minute going to be like, just kidding, and make me feel like, you know, he put one over on me. So the trick is, in the 7 minutes that I'm up there, is to warm them up to me and to get them kind of, I guess, on my side before I start talking about that kind of thing. But yes, almost after every performance, somebody comes up to me and like, is that true? And I think with the book, if I go up there and I have the book and they want to read it, they can find out for themselves if it's legit.
Have your opinions of like the whole ordeal changed over time? Like, I don't know, with age or with more experience and all that? Like, have you, when you first started doing everything that you were doing, and you know, you had a different mindset then, or do you still have somewhat of the same kind of views on everything?
I don't know that I was extremely ill-informed when I was doing this. So yeah, I would say that my opinions about a lot of things have changed, just in the way that we punish people for things that they do in the society. Again, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, yes, people need to be punished, and prison shouldn't ever be something that's like a reform camp. But at the same time, society really needs to take a look at who is walking out the prison door, and are they more dangerous than when they went in? And that is what I found, is people leaving with a giant chip on their shoulder. They had one coming in and it only got worse,
right,
having to go through what they went
positive, through. They're more
it's, you know, not only, they probably didn't have a whole lot of opportunity before they were caught. Now they're caught, now they have the stigma of being ex-con, and they have even less opportunity now. I mean, I can't imagine anyone in their right mind thinking that that's a good formula for a productive citizen when they get out. I mean, what are you going to do with these millions of people that get out every year? And the stance on crime doesn't change. It's Massachusetts, California, and Florida were all the only 3 states that instituted what they called truth in sentencing. The reason it was overcrowded in Concord was because of this. And it was basically saying that we don't give out split sentences anymore. I'm not going to give you 3 to 5 years, which means you do 3 years and then the rest of the 5 you spend on parole. They were giving out 8 years to 8 years in 1 day. That was your split sentence. So they were handing out these astronomical numbers, thinking that this would be a deterrent to crime, but it caused an overcrowding problem. They didn't know where to put everybody, and it only makes people angrier.
Right.
So I don't know what the answer is. I certainly don't. I'm not educated enough in it, but somebody has to figure out something, I feel, because part of the reason I lock my door at night is because maybe some guy that just got out who has no opportunity is going to come in and
rob you?
Well, no, but I'll be able to say, hey, I know you. What's up?
Well, did you meet any good people in jail that you were kind of like, why are you in here?
2, actually. And
out of all those people, there was only 2 people?
Yeah. Mac was a career criminal, and he was he was a solid guy, but he just loved to steal. He just loved it, and he won't ever stop. He was on his 3rd or 4th bid when I.
Do you think it was like psychologically?
Oh yeah, no question. He's just a sociopath, and he was just great fun to be around when he wasn't robbing. When I didn't have anything to steal, so I guess I was safe. But Charlie Armstrong, and if he's out there, look me up, because he was a kid who got mixed up in something that he shouldn't have. So basically what he did time for was called mayhem, which means dismembering a person. He was from this small town, he was a tough kid, and people were always trying to knock him down a peg, and he was at a party, and some people jumped him, and he ran into the kitchen, and he grabbed a knife. And when he turned around with the knife, the kid that was chasing him grabbed the blade of the knife and pulled it and cut 3 of his fingers off. And that's what they charged Charlie with. I mean, the intent of grabbing a knife is to stab somebody. You didn't, whether it was for protection or whatever, you deserved to be punished for that. Somebody doesn't have fingers anymore because of you. But he was just so misled, and his mother was a prostitute and a crack addict, and his dad wasn't around, and he had this little brother he had to take care of. And so when you really start to unravel this, or peel back the onion that is every inmate, you definitely don't ever shrug your shoulders as to why, other than my brother and my father and I. you're very rarely like, why is this person in here? Why did this person do this? So,
but you start looking at their background and seeing the stepping stones to that.
Unless you're Mac and you know, some expert can label you a sociopath and say, you know, this is a person that cannot follow the rules of society. He doesn't get it, and he's not going to ever do it. Then yeah, you lock the door and you throw away the key. And you know, there's part of me that does believe some of these people should be put down. They just don't get it for just heinous things. But people like Charlie need to be understood. I don't think he should be coddled. I don't think he needs to be given any opportunity that somebody that didn't do something like that should. But at the same time, that these people need to be understood, and it's only in understanding them that you can develop a way to help them. And so many of the inmates in there just needed some help.
Well, I know you have very strong opinions towards these things, but what's your opinion towards money now?
I hate it.
I do too.
Why do you hate it? Do you want to give me yours?
I wish that I could. If I could live without it, I'd be fine. Well, last week we actually did an interview with a guy about human sex slavery and human trafficking. And it was the same idea, like he actually mentioned something that was like surreal. He was telling me about how most of it was about money. And then he said that there was other people trafficking, selling of people in trade for growth hormones for animals, for beef and cows. And that kind of blew my mind because all I associated was sex for money, not human, like animal growth hormones that are going to be injected into food and people are going to eat. Do you see what I mean? Like there's a totally different side background story, but mainly it was money.
Yeah.
You know, people are selling people are selling jewelry, all to get this money, and it's like all it is nothing. It's just monopoly money. And it hurts me because I see so many people getting divorced over it. I see relationships breaking over it that aren't even in marriage. I see best friendships ruined by it. I see people stealing and begging and being miserable because of money when it means nothing.
Right. It
has no monetary value. It's just a piece of paper that says, hey, but I can't get my mind to not think that this $20 is worth whatever I think $20 is. You know what I mean? And the fact that, you know, you said that money is not the motive for all of the things that you did, but in the end, it was about money.
Oh, undoubtedly. You know, for my dad, I think it was. I think, you know, coming from a family that suffers from addiction, I think money was his. I think when you are raised by a woman who grew up in a time where 30 cents was whether, you know, you lived or died and was able to eat, I think that's what got him to snap. But me, you know, it's a means to an end, and, you know, you can't really survive without it.
Unfortunately.
But at the same time, I'm not as frugal as I'd like to be, and I tend to be a little bit more of a spendthrift. I think, you know, God forbid my grandmother ever passes away, but when it happens, if she donates anything to my well-being, I'm going to donate it to the NAACP or something like that, because I don't want it.
Well, do you have any memories of your dad from when you were younger, realizing this about him? Like when you were like developing your opinion of him when you were littler?
I do I think he's a sociopath.
What labels somebody a sociopath, just so everybody knows?
Unfeeling. Incapable of feeling emotions that a normal person would feel. Not capable of feeling regret and remorse. I don't feel...
You don't think he even feels that now?
No.
And he's in prison for how long?
He's out.
Oh.
He lives down the street. He was in for 12 years. One of the things that sort of led me on to that label, and, you know, I have a state college degree in psychology, so I may not be qualified to make that. But we were in the prison yard together. It was my first time seeing him for years after, you know, they keep you apart in the prison system. And when he got to Concord, I met him in the yard. And I said, Dad, you just got 12 years in prison. You're 56 years old. That's almost like a life sentence. And no emotion. He said, I lived a good life. I've been on vacation. I worked hard. Almost making it sound like everybody gets 12 years in prison, and this was a rite of passage that he had to go through. Has never apologized to me or my brother. And you know what? We were both adults. I was 20, my brother was 25, or 23, so...
I don't really think you had all of the, Your brain doesn't even stop developing till you're 25, so I don't think
my
you
brain
had all
stopped
of that.
developing at 2, I think. No, I don't know. I just think about if it were my kid,
I was
how
actually gonna ask you
remorseful I
that.
would be.
What do you think if your son came home and did something like along the same lines you did? How would
kill
you
him.
feel?
He would be too dead to. I don't know. I don't know if there was some sort of intervention that could have happened along the way. There's a couple of things in my brain that lead me to believe that he's more at fault than the average person would be. One is he was my father. He's supposed to protect me. He's supposed to love me the most. And to put me in that type of danger, I think is unforgivable. You don't do that.
Well, you did have guns with you, right? It was like armed robberies. It wasn't just...
Yeah. People don't tend to give you their stuff when you just ask them for it. You have to motivate them. And the gun usually provides enough motivation.
You didn't ever actually have to shoot anybody, did you?
No.
Did anybody?
What was just, and it's just awful about all of this, is that our second robbery was done, we went into a store, and when we went into the store, the guy was armed. And at that point, my brother and I weren't, only my dad was. And the guy that owned the store was armed. And we walked away from it. And a week later, he was shot by somebody else during a robbery. So after that happened, and after that murder rippled through the jewelry industry, everybody that we robbed just rolled over. They just gave us what we wanted. And my brother, is 6'4", 250. If he's coming at you, he's the one that doesn't need the gun. He asks for something from you, you're going to give it up. And you're not going to say why. You're just going to report it afterwards. Me, not so much.
Do you have any feelings towards guns?
I think they should be outlawed. 100% should not be in anybody's hands, period. You do not need a high-powered rifle to blow the head off a deer. Nobody's starving in this country. I'm sorry. Nobody that can afford a gun like that is starving in this country and needs to go out and take down a defenseless animal. It makes me crazy. It makes me absolutely crazy. To argue that it's in the Constitution, they wrote that back when a time when having a gun was a little bit more necessary than it is today. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's insane. I think it's insane.
Well, I mean, from doing all this, did you actually get any money out of it? Did you actually get to see any of the reward from doing what you did?
There was just tons of money everywhere, all the time. And that's how our addictions just skyrocketed, my brother and I. After every robbery, we bought a ton of cocaine and sat in a hotel room and did our best to spend as much of the money as possible. Couldn't spend it.
So was your jewelry heist tied with anybody that was in a drug trade?
Well, in terms of trading stolen jewelry for drugs, yes. But no, they were never really.
So it was more of a barter system as opposed to just getting straight cash?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you must feel a lot of regret from doing this, yeah?
I do.
Because it changed your life?
I do, but, I don't think that if I could go back and do it again, I would do it any different. Because I think that it has made me, I have gone through a very unique experience, unique to what I think a huge portion of the population can relate to. Part of that is still my punishment, where, I don't talk to my family now. I don't talk to my brother. I don't talk to my father. So being able to relate to people that have been locked up and have your freedom taken away, and to still have that paranoia and still have those dreams and still have that trauma of prison is tough when you don't have. An addict can go to AA and talk to a bunch of other addicts. I'm sure that there are support groups for ex-cons, but I don't know where they are. So,
does it affect your relationships at all?
No. If anything, it's made me laid back enough to handle females.
Because they're not as bad as prison?
Oh, wow. No, I mean, it's no, it doesn't really affect my relationships. I don't, no.
Do you ever talk to your brother about it now
Nope.
and kind of discuss?
I haven't talked to my brother in 8 years.
No?
No.
Is there a reason?
I had hoped that, we would, we both grew up in the same house. We both went through the same
Where did you guys grow up?
dysfunction of Peabody, Massachusetts. Go Tanners. I don't even know what that means.
Neither do I just giggled.
He came out of prison and started using drugs again and ended up going back.
And you don't understand that at all?
I just had to get away from it. At this point, I don't want to be associated with anything. Like when you first get out of prison, it's scary to go into a mall. And the thing that freaked me out the most was that I'd walk by a bank, it would be in the process of being robbed, I would get caught up in it, they would investigate me and send me back to prison. So I stayed at home. I stayed locked up in my room. And for the most part, I think that's one of the after effects is I crave solitude. And there are times that I could spend days just locked up in my house and not going anywhere. And in that, that somewhat does affect my relationships. I don't get close to people very easily. I don't have a ton of friends. I don't have a rich social life. I don't really trust that many people. So I keep a lot of stuff surface. And
but you did have the time to write a book.
I did.
Do you feel like that was a really good success for you?
It depends on how you measure success. I've actually written 2 books.
I don't measure it by money, if that means anything to
No,
you.
and I wouldn't necessarily either. It's what the people in the industry do, though. So it is the means to get their attention and to get the notoriety that you want so that you can do the work that you want to do. Mm-hmm. So, you have to use it the way that they're using it. And that's really, if I come away from learning about the publishing industry, if I learned anything from it, that's what they want to know the most. The proposal that you write to publish a book, the second page or the third page is markets. Who are you going to market this to? And you better not say women over 40, which is 80% of your book buying public, because that's not succinct enough. They want to know specifically, do you know Oprah? And will she endorse this? If you say yes, it doesn't matter what you write. It's like comedy. So when you first get into comedy, you have the option of going to open mics, and there are bringers. So you can go to some shows and they say
that everybody wants to go see. You mean?
Well, I don't know about that. But to get stage time at certain clubs, you have to bring a certain number of people. So essentially, you pay for stage time, or your friends pay for stage time. And basically, that says that doesn't matter if you're funny. If you bring 5 people, you'll get up. And I think that says something about some of the promoters that do comedy here. The Comedy Studio, Rick Jenkins, has been in it for 16 years. His club has an unbelievable reputation. And if you're not funny, and if you can't get up and deliver a great set, then he's not putting you on Friday, Saturday nights. It's not happening. So there's definitely 2 sides to that story there. And I think the same thing with the book. If I know Oprah and I can sling 60,000 words together.
I'm a slight version of Oprah, in case you guys didn't know.
It doesn't matter what you write. I mean, you've read a crappy book before.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that I wrote a great book, and I'm not saying that I'm a great writer. The story's there. It's compelling, I think, compelling enough anyway, and I think deserves some attention. Basically, what I want to do with it is try to get into more schools and talk to more kids, and
What advice do you have for younger children?
It's all about consequences of your behavior. So when I go and I talk to these teachers before I go up and I talk to them, a lot of them want me to talk about bullying, and a lot of them now want me to talk about what you put online stays online. So if you mention somebody's name or do something to somebody or say something about somebody and you put that on the interwebs, I love that word. That it's going to stay there. And those are the consequences that 5 years from now, it's like getting a tattoo at 20. Don't do it. Because by 25, you're going to be like, why did I get Mickey Mouse with his pants down put on my cheek? Like,
I got a religious tattoo when I was 18.
And you hate it now, right?
No, I love it.
Okay, so it
totally describes who I am as a person. So
I have a stupid wolf on my ankle, and I hate it. I hate every day that
so maybe you should tell them not to get tattoos.
Don't get tattoos.
Being silly.
But I think that when I wear pink sweaters, and I don't think I'm that threatening. But so when I sit and I initially start talking to the kids about, I'm going to talk to you about addiction, and they're kind of like, they gloss over a little bit. But then I say, and then I robbed jewelry stores for 5 years, and I had guns and money, and I stole fire trucks. And when I get into that, their jaws drop, and they're like, oh my God, that's incredible. And one of 2 things happen. One is that they say, oh my God, that could be me. And I don't want to do the same thing that he did. And look what he did with his life. And occasionally, some kid who thinks he's a badass will say, he made it out, so I can do whatever I want and I'll make it out. But statistically, again, I think I'm in the 1% of the people that can walk out of prison and say, I don't want to go back there. So I'm going to have to find loopholes to make sure that I don't go back there. Because too many people just continue to reoffend.
Yeah, it's kind of a bummer.
Terrible.
Do you have anything that you want to say that I missed?
No.
I hit them all. I got everything.
I think you did.
Woo!
Yeah.
All right. Well, I really want to thank you for coming on today.
You're welcome.
And I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And just so everybody knows, we're going to be making, it's not jailbird chicken anymore. It's prison chicken, pearl onions, and emerald pea chicken pot pie. So stay tuned for that. And again, thank you very much for coming on today.
Thank you for
check
having
out his book.
Family Jewels on Amazon, hopefully within the next week or two.
This isn't going to be on by then. You want to say that again?
Well, what?
I'm going to have to re-edit it later, so you're going to say that differently. It will be out by the time that I edit this.
Ooh.
So, he has a book out.
It's called Family Jewels, and it will be out in, not stores, it'll be on Amazon soon.
You don't even have to say that. Just say it's on Amazon.
It's on Amazon.
It's called what?
Family Jewels.
No, try it again, because I'll just edit all that out.
Okay, cool. It's called Family Jewels, and it's on Amazon.
Fabulous. So, look for that, and stay tuned for the cooking segment. And thank you again.
Welcome.
You're good.
I always wanted to do this.
Go ahead.
Let's do it over again from the top.
Yeah?
I hated it.
Oh, God. I hate when that happens. It was my whole first season.